Good afternoon, First Baptist Church Perkins family, as well as maybe any guests that are tuning into this video. Wanted to come to you this afternoon with a video. If you hadn't heard, had a pretty exciting, big announcement yesterday at church, and wanted to do this video for really four reasons. One being to share with anyone that wasn't here yesterday or didn't get an email about the announcement yesterday. Two, share how this has come about, that it wasn't a quick decision over just a couple weeks. It wasn't something we thought lightly. It wasn't something that we specifically created a position for a person. And third, wanted to come to you and kind of hopefully answer some questions through the video. And then really fourth, share with you the process this week. And first of all, what was the big announcement? Well, the announcement I shared yesterday at church was that after meeting with the personnel and then sharing that with the deacon body, the church staff, and as well with a blessing and support from the stewardship committee based on our current church finances, share with the church that we want to create a new staff position, associate pastor staff position, job description, and with that move Joe Allen Peck over to that staff position, and then create a new job description for an interim youth minister, and that interim youth minister would be Brandon Martin. So how did this come about? Well, one of the things for me over the many years of ministry, back in the mid to late 90s, I was introduced to a Bible study, and I know some of you had gone through it. It's by Henry Blackaby, called Experiencing God, Knowing and Doing the Will of God. And it's based on John 15:5, apart from me you can do nothing, on really 7 principles that God is always at work, and then he's pursuing a love relationship with us, and then he invites us to join him, and then he speaks to us by his Holy Spirit through his word, circumstances, prayer, church, people. And then he asked us to join him, and then we face this crisis of belief. Are we going to join God, or are we not going to? And then through that, we adjust our life to what God's saying, and then we get to experience that. Well, that principle, that where's God at work, we join him, is something that has really guided me for years in ministry. And so with that, it was about a year ago I met with the personnel committee. Obviously, just come back from my sabbatical. A year ago, came out of my sabbatical and was sharing with the personnel committee about everything I'd learned and what God had spoken to me during that time and how I'd been refreshed. And it was through that a conversation began, and the question was asked: have we ever considered an associate pastor? More specifically, have we ever considered Joe as possibly being associate pastor? And it had not crossed my mind or our mind or anything like that, but it was something I am sure, as well as the personnel committee, we just began to pray about and let God work. Well, where's God been at work? Well, obviously in a month, I'll be celebrating my 10-year anniversary here. It's 10 years ago, this church, on February 14, 2010, this church, Sunday night, whole 71 people voted. 70 said yes, one person said no. Still trying to find that one person. No, just kidding. Said they called me and my family here, me to be the pastor of First Baptist Perkins. So obviously my job description was written for First Baptist Church Perkins 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we were running around 120 in Sunday school, 150 in church, had a budget about $298,000. We didn't have a preschool coordinator. We didn't have a children's coordinator. Didn't have a paid financial coordinator. And at that time, like a week later, the church was going to have to begin searching for a youth minister, and there's always been, it's been a full-time position, but there's been a youth minister and other duties assigned, and a lot of other duties as assigned. So that's where this, 10 years ago, where we were. Well, it doesn't take much to look around and see all that God has been doing. What's he been doing? God's been doing for years some great work in our church and growing our church. Pre-COVID, Sunday school was running around 220. And I did some research, and basically the first quarter of this year, our Sunday school, basically 260 people were showing up at least twice a month. Corporate worship, we were running 330. So you do kind of the same numbers. We were close to 400 showing up at our church twice a month. It's a lot. I mean, and I could go on and on of all that God has been doing in this church. I don't need to tell you that. You see it. But here's the other thing where God has been at work over the last year. God's been at work in our church, more specifically, this last year, in young families and in families that are fostering or pursuing adoption. Matter of fact, I look back, and even during COVID, okay, these last 7 months, we have 11 new families that a year ago, they weren't coming to our church. And we've got at least another 5 or 6 that they were already coming to our church pre-COVID. But since right before COVID, and even as we started regathering together in May, we've got 11 new families attending our church. If you come to the first service, you may not see them. But if you come to the second service, you see we've got some new faces at our church. So God's been at work in our church through young families. Well, and then COVID hits. And that brings a whole set of challenges and interruptions and discussions. And no church, no pastor has ever thought they'd have to face and deal with and plan and work around. And through that, it has taken that job description that was already from 10 years ago, and had added more responsibilities on my plate with our online ministry. Because what's happening now is before people even show up to our church, they're finding everything they can about our church online through our website, our Facebook page, our Twitter, through our online services. See, before COVID, we just had Facebook Live. You set a tripod up in front and hit Facebook Live on your phone. Well, when COVID hit, we went from showing Facebook Live to really producing a service. And that's going to continue because there are folks right now that they've not been back. This is their church, but they've not been back to First Baptist Perkins yet because of health for themselves, someone in their family, or they're just cautious still and not ready. And that's okay. But they're still part of our church. And so that ministry who are those folks? And that we haven't seen in the building, but yet they're watching on Sundays. But here's what else has happened. We've got a large group in our church that are working the medical field. They're under a lot of stress. We have at least 25 people in our church that work for a public school system, Ripley, Stillwater, and obviously Perkins Tribe. Those employees of the school systems are under a lot of stress as well. And then you add those that are staying home right now due to health, and also those that are just choosing to stay home to be cautious. That my ministry as a pastor to them as well has really intensified and needs more attention, if you will. Where else has God been at work? Well, during this COVID, Joe and I were on our way back home from meeting with Stan, talking about our online and how to make that better and work on that, what we needed to do. And I've been noticing some things, so I just talked to Joe. I just said, hey, Joe, how are you doing? Where do you see yourself? What do you see going on? And through that ride home led to he and I having a really good conversation and me reflecting back on that question that was asked a year ago. Have we considered an associate pastor? So I wanted Joe to share with you where God has been at work, also me not realizing it, in he and Candace's life.
The timeline is eerily similar to what Marty laid out. Sometime around August of last year, September, that area, I remember Candace and I starting to have conversations about, our future in ministry and what it looked like. And even in meeting with the personnel committee, around that time, I mentioned I was still, a full go for student ministry and still, very much in the game, I felt like. But, didn't realize till recently that may not be the case. And so, even up to right now, I'm so happy with where I'm at and what I'm doing and everything. But so in those conversations, Candace and I would have, like, is there a future in our church that isn't student ministry? And not really being able to come up with an answer, and just kind of praying about what that might look like in the future, and what the future would hold for us. Really, any kind of thinking about bringing that up, or letting Marty know kind of what we were praying through, came to a halt early in March with what we were dealing with COVID. That kind of became clear what our role was to be for the foreseeable future, was to be a stable part of this youth ministry going forward in COVID. And I had no qualms about that. I still know that was the right thing to do, was to put anything I had thought about or prayed about on hold. God made that very aware to us at that point. And so never lost contentment or anything like that through this whole period, but it just was definitely aware that God had me there for a reason, and there, and where I'm still in now. So it wasn't until a few months ago that we had that conversation, Marty and I. There was no me coming to him saying, I think I'm ready to be done with student ministry, or I think I'm ready to start looking for a new place to go, or a new church to pursue, or new title. That didn't happen at all. And this conversation was completely organic and completely natural. He asked me questions that Candace and I were asking ourselves, and I didn't know the answer to all of them, but I was happy that somebody was asking me them. And it just was a really good conversation, really healthy conversation, and kind of a surreal one, to be honest. Like, oh my gosh, maybe there is a future for us here, because we have no desire to leave Perkins, and we really have no desire to leave this church. We love it here. We love our family here, and love our schools and teachers and everything. So with what we've been dealing with since last August and the end of last summer, is with having 3 kids now, is extremely difficult for me to get away to all the activities and games and shows and all kinds of things that I have really done in the past, and told the church that I felt like a big part of student ministry when we were hired here. And not only that, but having Candace not so much being involved with the student ministry as much as she had in the past, that's been weighing on me really heavily. I know 100% I wouldn't have got this job if it wasn't for Candace. So just knowing that she doesn't get to be as involved with our ministry has weighed a lot and been a burden to us. And so how can we help this church? What's our best spot in order to help this church going forward? That wasn't really clear to us, and we had no idea. After the conversation with Marty, we thought that there may be a place for us, going forward here. I had known for sure, probably this spring, that this will be our last youth ministry position. But usually whenever you think that, or you say that, you are kind of thinking, okay, where are we going? And so, on the one hand, I know that this is my last youth ministry position. On the other hand, I have no desire to go anywhere. What does that look like? And so knowing that Marty and even other people on the personnel committee were kind of on the same road for about the same amount of time as we had been, was pretty sobering, and was confidence building for us. We think that this is a move that can we can really do well, and Candace and I can do better together. It'll be more of a team ministry thing than we've been able to do over the last 2 years with fostering and adopting our kids. And so we look forward to that, and I also look forward to the thought of, we've been here almost 7 years. The youth ministry, we believe can really receive a jolt and a fresh, kind of change and fresh start going forward as well. With Brandon being the contact person for that, he knows all the kids. He's here. He serves them well, and so we just look at this as being, good for Marty, good for the church, good for our family, and I do believe good for the youth ministry going forward. So all positive things from us, and look forward to what the next step is for us, and how that's going to work out, and getting to know more people, that haven't until this point maybe, or the near future, haven't really had a solid home and place in our church as far as young adults and young families. Time for them to have a place, and to have a contact person here on staff that's here for them as well.
And so as God had been working in Joe and Candace's life, he was also at work in a young man in our church who's been in this church for years, Brandon Martin. I've known Brandon, these 10 years. I've seen him grow up, and being in ministry for 20 some years, I've been able to spot young men that have been called by God to go into ministry. And I could see that in him. And so a couple summers ago, one of the youth workers approached him about what was one of his ideal jobs, and he made the comment, "I want Joe's job." This past summer, my wife said something to him about ministry. So after talking with Joe, I approached Brandon about this. Joe did as well, and we just asked him to share, and he's got a clear calling. He shared that with us about a calling into ministry. And so here's a young man in our church that God has called into ministry. Man, what a great opportunity for us to disciple and mentor and to walk with him and help him through that. The kids already know him. And so to say all of that, it was about 5-6 weeks ago, I can't remember, I approached the personnel committee and said, I really need to have a meeting. And I had just got an article. I get numerous leadership articles through social media. And it was an article titled, When to Know When It's Time, or How to Know When It's Time for a Change. And one statement in there was, when the structure you now have isn't sustainable. And I'm here to tell you, our structure's not sustainable. And I shared that with the personnel, and after 4 meetings with them and meetings with others, that's why we presentation that we believe the Lord has led us, because we've just seen him at work over this last year in all of this. What are some questions? Hopefully we've answered several through all of that. One is, when you look at Joe's job description, you're going to see about the first 6 things are things that I was responsible for, that I am passing off to him. And then there's Cedar Springs is still on there. The new ones, it would be developing, he and Candace, developing and creating, implementing a ministry to young adults and young families, as he and I both just shared. The interim for the youth minister position, man, just 4 main things. Man, get to know those kids, spend time with them in their activities, get together with parents and youth to plan out responsibilities and ministry opportunities, and to disciple them. And I'll be walking with him, the parents as well. And so we're excited about that as well. The other thing is, what's the process? Well, hopefully you watch this video, hopefully it answers questions. If not, send me an email. Say, hey, I got another question. This Wednesday night at 7:30, we're going to have a business meeting in the chapel. For business meeting, it's going to be Q&A. Answer any further questions that there might be. And we'll offer it on Zoom, so if you are unable to attend, you want to be a part of it, email me or the office, and we'll send you the passcode to the Zoom. And then Sunday morning at church, we will have a ballot vote, say yes or no for the whole thing, yes for the whole thing, no at the end of the service for those that are active church members. But as well, if you are unable to attend, you've not been able to attend worship because of everything that's been going on, you do have permission to mail in just a piece of paper, yes or no, P.O. Box 369. I'll know what that stands for. We understand during this time, like I've said a couple times, folks are not attending for good reasons, and we want you to still feel part of your church and what is going on, and that's why we're doing this video. That's why we're trying to let you know. So I hope what you've heard from our heart. Hope you've heard the fact how God has been at work, and we just want to join where He's at work and what He's doing, and I'm excited. I'm excited for what is in store for our church and our community and the people that aren't here yet. Got a question? Man, don't hesitate to holler. Give me a call, email, and I look forward to answering any of those and seeing you all this week, and definitely on Sunday. You all have a great day. Thanks for tuning in.